Commander Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the International Space Station Hawthorne, watching Earth's blue marble rotate slowly beneath her. After 15 years of service in space, this would be her final watch. The station, once humanity's crown jewel of orbital operations, was being decommissioned. Progress, they called it. Newer stations with better technology would take its place, but Sarah knew she would miss the old girl. Her tablet chimed with the hourly systems check. She smiled at the familiar routine, checking atmospheric readings, power distribution, and orbital calculations. These numbers had been her constant companions for so long that they felt like old friends. The Hawthorne might be outdated, but Sarah had kept her running smooth as silk right until the end. "Commander, you might want to take a look at this." The voice of Dr. Marcus Walsh, the station's science officer, crackled through her comm unit. There was an edge to his voice that made Sarah straighten up immediately. "What have you got, Marcus?" "Something's playing havoc with our long-range sensors. At first, I thought it was a malfunction, but—" He paused, and Sarah could hear him tapping away at his console. "It's like nothing I've ever seen before." Sarah was already moving, pushing off from the observation deck with practiced ease. In zero gravity, she navigated the station's corridors with the grace of someone who had long ago learned to dance with weightlessness. She reached the science bay in record time, catching herself on the doorframe. Marcus sat hunched over his instruments, his salt and pepper hair floating slightly in the zero environment. On his main screen, a strange pattern of energy readings pulsed and shifted. Sarah had seen a lot of unusual phenomena during her time in space, but this was different. The readings seemed to have a rhythm to them, almost like— "It's a pattern," she said, leaning closer. "These energy spikes are repeating in regular intervals." Marcus nodded vigorously. "Exactly. And here's the kicker. They're getting stronger. Whatever this is, it's getting closer." Sarah's mind raced through protocols and procedures. The Hawthorne might be scheduled for decommissioning, but she was still a functioning station with responsibilities to Earth below. "Have you contacted Houston?" "Tried. There's some kind of interference. I can't get a clear signal through." That was concerning. The Hawthorne's communication systems were redundant many times over. For all channels to be affected simultaneously suggested something far more sophisticated than natural interference. "What about the Chinese space station? The lunar base?" Marcus shook his head. "Nothing. It's like something's creating a bubble around us." Sarah was about to suggest running a diagnostic on their communication array when every screen in the science bay suddenly went dark. Before either of them could react, they flickered back to life. But now they displayed something entirely different. Symbols, unlike anything Sarah had ever seen, scrolled across the screens. "Marcus," Sarah said slowly, "please tell me this is some kind of system glitch." "No glitch I've ever seen could do this." His voice was barely above a whisper. "Sarah, I think we're being contacted." As if in response to his words, the symbols began to arrange themselves into a new pattern. Slowly, methodically, they began to transform into English letters. The message was simple but world-changing. "Humanity, we need your help." Sarah felt her heart rate spike, but years of training kept her voice steady. "Marcus, start recording everything. I want every bit of data we can gather." The symbols continued to shift and change, forming more words. "We are the Araxian Collective. Your species has been observed. Your adaptability is unique. Your perspective is needed." Sarah keyed her comm unit, trying every emergency frequency she knew. Still nothing but static. They were completely isolated up here, about to make first contact with an alien civilization, and she couldn't even alert Earth about what was happening. Through the science bay's window, a shimmer appeared in space, like heat waves rising from hot asphalt, but against the backdrop of stars. The distortion grew larger, taking on form and substance. A vessel emerged, unlike anything human eyes had ever seen. It seemed to be made of overlapping plates that shifted and moved like scales on a fish, its surface reflecting the starlight in iridescent patterns. Beautiful, Marcus breathed, and Sarah had to agree. The alien ship was easily 3 times the size of the Hawthorne, yet it moved with an impossible grace. New words appeared on their screens. We request permission to establish direct communication. Your station's systems are compatible. Sarah straightened her uniform in an unconscious gesture. 15 years of space service hadn't prepared her for this moment, but then again, how could it have? She was about to make a decision that would change human history forever. Marcus, she said, her voice firm and clear, initialize communication protocols. Let's see what our new friends have to say. As Marcus worked at his console, Sarah couldn't help but smile slightly. Her last day on the Hawthorne was supposed to be a quiet one, full of final checks and goodbye messages. Instead, she was about to become humanity's first official representative to an alien civilization. Sometimes, she reflected, the universe had a strange sense of humor. The screens flickered once more, and a face appeared. At least, she thought it was a face. The being had features that seemed vaguely humanoid, but with subtle differences that made it unmistakably alien. Its skin was a pale lavender color, with what appeared to be bioluminescent patterns that shifted and changed as it moved. Its eyes were large and multifaceted, like those of an insect, but they held an intelligence that Sarah recognized immediately. Commander Sarah Chen. The being spoke, its voice surprisingly melodious. I am Ambassador Corell of the Araxian Collective. We apologize for the dramatic nature of our arrival, but time is of the essence. We face a crisis that threatens not just our civilization, but countless others across this sector of space. And we believe that humanity, particularly humans like yourself, who have learned to live among the stars, may hold the key to our survival. Sarah glanced at Marcus, who nodded to confirm that everything was being recorded. She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and prepared to take humanity's first step into a much larger universe. Ambassador Corell, she replied. On behalf of humanity, I'm listening. The holographic display in the Hawthorne Science Bay shimmered as Ambassador Corell's image explained the situation. Sarah listened intently, her mind racing to process the implications of each new piece of information. Beside her, Marcus frantically documented everything, his fingers dancing across multiple keyboards. We call it the Void Cascade, Corell said, the bioluminescent patterns on their face pulsing with what Sarah interpreted as concern. It began in the Carina sector, consuming entire star systems, not through any known natural phenomenon, but through a fundamental breakdown of space-time itself. The ambassador gestured, and a 3-dimensional map materialized in the air between them. Dozens of star systems were marked in red, forming an expanding pattern that reminded Sarah of a cancer spreading through healthy tissue. Our most advanced theoretical physicists have failed to find a solution, Corell continued. We've lost contact with 17 civilizations already. But then we observe your species. Sarah raised an eyebrow. I assume you mean something specific about humanity caught your attention. The alien's multifaceted eyes seemed to shimmer. Your species faces problems differently. Where others see immutable laws, you see guidelines to be challenged. Where others seek perfect solutions, you excel at finding imperfect ones that work anyway. We call it thinking outside the box. Marcus interjected, then quickly added, Sorry, Commander. But Corell's patterns shifted in what might have been appreciation. Yes, exactly. This idiom perfectly illustrates our point. Other species accept the box as a limitation. Humans immediately question why there must be a box at all. Sarah moved to the window, studying the alien vessel that hung against the starfield. Its organic-looking design defied everything she knew about spacecraft construction, yet it clearly worked. Ambassador, I appreciate the vote of confidence in humanity, but we're hardly the most advanced species you could ask for help. We haven't even colonized our own solar system yet. Advanced technology is not what we seek, Corell replied. We have that in abundance. We need fresh perspectives, new ways of approaching problems. We need the human talent for finding unexpected solutions. A new alert chimed on Marcus's console. "Commander, we're getting signals again. Houston is demanding to know what's happening up here." He paused, reading further. "Actually, every major space agency on Earth is demanding to know what's happening up here." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "I imagine we've caused quite a stir." She turned back to Corell's image. "Ambassador, I'll need time to contact Earth's authorities. This isn't a decision I can make unilaterally." "Of course," Corell agreed, "but please understand that time is not our ally. The void cascade continues to expand. We estimate it will reach this sector of space within 1 standard solar year." Sarah felt her stomach tighten. "Including Earth's system." Yes. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah looked down at Earth, peaceful and blue below them, completely unaware of the cosmic threat heading its way. She had sworn an oath to protect humanity's interests in space, but what exactly did that mean in this context? "Marcus," she said, "open a channel to Houston. Priority 1. The next few hours passed in a blur of communication with Earth. Sarah watched as the world's government struggled to process the reality of both alien contact and an impending cosmic catastrophe. Video conferences were hastily arranged, experts were consulted, and heated debates erupted in multiple languages. Through it all, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were wasting precious time. She understood the need for caution and protocol, but Corell's words about the human tendency to think differently kept coming back to her. Maybe that's exactly what was needed now, someone willing to step outside normal protocols. During a brief break in the seemingly endless series of conferences, Sarah found herself back at the observation window. The alien vessel had shifted position slightly, its scaled surface catching sunlight in mesmerizing patterns. "Penny for your thoughts." Marcus appeared beside her, offering a pouch of coffee through a straw, a luxury they'd been saving for their last day on station. Sarah took a sip, considering her response. "I'm thinking about boxes. The metaphorical kind. The ones we put ourselves in. Right now, Earth's governments are following first contact protocols that were written without any real understanding of what first contact would be like. They're trying to fit an unprecedented situation into pre-existing frameworks." Marcus nodded slowly. "While a cosmic anomaly that breaks the laws of physics is heading our way." "Exactly." Sarah pushed away from the window, her decision made. "Open a channel to the Araxian vessel." "Commander." Marcus's voice held a note of warning. "We don't have authorization yet." "I'm not going to commit Earth to anything," Sarah assured him. "But I'm done waiting for permission to have a conversation that might save humanity." Corell's image appeared promptly when hailed. Sarah noticed that the ambassador's color had shifted slightly, taking on a deeper purple hue. "Ambassador," Sarah began, "while Earth's authorities debate their response, I have some questions about this void cascade. You mentioned 17 civilizations have been lost. What exactly does lost mean in this context?" The alien's patterns darkened. "The void cascade doesn't simply destroy. It unmakes. Space-time itself unravels. We've observed entire solar systems disappear, leaving behind nothing but absolute vacuum. No radiation, no particles, no trace they ever existed." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, but pressed on. "And you've tried everything. Conventional weapons, energy fields, gravitational manipulation. All conventional approaches have failed. We even attempted to create artificial quantum singularities to contain it. Nothing works." Sarah began to pace, a habit that looked rather different in zero gravity. "Maybe that's the problem. You're trying to stop it, to contain it. But if it's unmaking space-time itself..." She paused, a wild idea forming. "What if instead of trying to stop it, we try to redirect it?" Corell's patterns shifted rapidly. "Redirect it? To where?" "I don't know yet," Sarah admitted. "But on Earth, when we can't stop a natural force, we often find ways to work with it instead. We don't try to stop rivers from flowing. We build channels to direct them where we want them to go." The ambassador was silent for a long moment. When they spoke again, their voice held a new tone, something Sarah might have called hope. This is exactly the kind of thinking we need. Commander Chen, I formally invite you to join our research team aboard the Starweaver. Bring your science officer as well, if he's willing. We can have you back to Earth within one of your months if your governments require it. Sarah looked at Marcus, who was already nodding enthusiastically. She thought about the mountain of paperwork and diplomatic clearances this would normally require. She thought about protocols and chains of command. Then she thought about Earth, beautiful and vulnerable below them, and all the other worlds facing extinction. Ambassador, she said, we accept, but I have one condition. Name it. I want regular communication with Earth. If we're going to try saving the galaxy, we might as well bring humanity along for the ride. It's time we all started thinking outside our boxes. Krell's pattern swirled in what Sarah was beginning to recognize as amusement. Agreed. Prepare for transfer within 2 of your hours. And Commander, welcome to the greater galaxy. As Sarah began preparations for their departure, she couldn't help but smile at the irony. She had expected today to be her last day in space. Instead, it was just the beginning of humanity's greatest adventure. Aboard the Starweaver, Sarah discovered that adapting to alien technology was the least of her challenges. The ship's science bay housed researchers from 7 different species, each with their own approach to understanding the universe. The Orcsians, with their crystalline thought patterns, sought mathematical perfection. The gaseous Vens saw reality as flows and currents. The silicon-based Meridians processed everything through geological timescales. It's like trying to solve a puzzle while everyone's looking at different pieces from different puzzles, Marcus commented during their 3rd day aboard. He was attempting to explain Earth's ocean currents to a Ven scientist named Zephyr, who kept interpreting everything in terms of stellar gas flows. Sarah watched the exchange with growing interest. Despite the frustration evident in Marcus's voice, something about the conversation nagged at her mind. The Ven's insistence on viewing everything as fluid dynamics wasn't just a cultural quirk, it was a fundamentally different way of seeing the universe. Could you show me the latest data on the Void Cascade's expansion pattern again? She asked Corell, who had taken to spending time in the science bay to observe the humans' methods. The 3-dimensional map materialized in the center of the room. Red markers showed systems already lost, while yellow indicated those at immediate risk. Sarah studied the pattern, remembering something from her early days of spaceflight training. Marcus, she called out, remember that lecture about solar wind patterns? The one that nearly put the entire class to sleep. Marcus floated over, followed by his Ven colleague. The one about magnetic field interactions. What about it? Look at this pattern. Doesn't it remind you of something? Marcus stared at the map for a long moment. Then his eyes widened. It's like a magnetic reconnection event. The way solar plasma follows magnetic field lines during a solar storm. Exactly. Sarah turned to Zephyr, whose gaseous form swirled with interest. You see reality as flows and currents. Could you analyze this data from that perspective? Not as a breakdown of spacetime, but as a flow pattern. The Ven's form condensed with concentration. Zephyr interfaced with the holographic display, adding new layers of data. Under their manipulation, the pattern of destruction began to look less like random decay and more like a complex fluid dynamics problem. This is remarkable, Grell said, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing rapidly. We've been so focused on the fundamental physics, we never considered viewing it as a flow pattern. Other researchers began to gather around the display. A Meridian scientist named Stone Cipher added gravitational data, while an Orcsian mathematician called First Light began running new calculations based on fluid dynamics equations. It's not breaking down spacetime, Sarah said slowly, the pieces falling into place. It's redirecting it, like a river changing course, but on a cosmic scale. But rivers don't just change course randomly, Marcus added, catching her train of thought. They follow the path of least resistance, shaped by the underlying geology. He turned to Stone Cipher. Could there be something in the structure of space itself that's creating these patterns? The meridian's crystalline surface flickered with internal light, their version of excitement. Underlying spatial geology. Yes. Dark matter concentrations, gravitational wells, quantum foam density variations. We never considered. The science bay erupted into a flurry of activity. Species that had been working separately began combining their perspectives. The Ven's understanding of flows merged with meridian knowledge of cosmic structure. Araxian mathematics provided the framework to unite these different viewpoints. Sarah found herself at the center of it all, not because she had the most advanced knowledge, but because she could see how all these pieces fit together. She had spent her career managing complex systems, coordinating between different departments and specialties. This wasn't so different, just on a much grander scale. Hours turned into days as they refined their understanding. The void cascade wasn't a breakdown of reality. It was a redistribution of space-time itself. Following patterns they were only beginning to understand. Like a river system responding to changes in elevation and geology, space-time was being channeled by underlying cosmic structures they had never noticed before. The question isn't how to stop it, Sarah explained during one of her daily reports back to Earth. It's how to work with it. We need to understand these patterns so we can predict where it's going to flow next. The response from Earth was mixed. Some scientists were skeptical of what they saw as overly simplistic analogies. Others were intrigued by the novel approach. But all of them were paying attention now, especially after Sarah's team successfully predicted the next 3 systems the cascade would affect. One evening, though time felt strange aboard an alien vessel, Sarah found herself in the ship's equivalent of a recreation area. The space adapted to each species' needs, creating comfortable environments for relaxation and social interaction. She was surprised to find Corel there. Their colors shifted to softer, more casual patterns. "You seem troubled, Commander," the ambassador observed. Sarah nodded. "We're making progress understanding the cascade, but understanding isn't enough. We need to find a way to redirect it away from inhabited systems. And you believe this is possible? On Earth, we've learned to redirect rivers, control flooding, channel water where we need it. If space-time really does flow like a fluid." She paused, a new thought forming. What if we could create artificial structures in space? Not physical barriers, but gravitational ones. Like building levees, but on a cosmic scale. Corel's patterns shifted to a color Sarah had never seen before. Using gravitational manipulation technology to alter the underlying structure of space itself. It's unprecedented. "Sometimes unprecedented is exactly what we need," Sarah replied. Humanity's greatest achievements often came from doing what everyone else thought was impossible. Like a primitive species helping to solve one of the greatest cosmic threats ever encountered. Corel's patterns suggested amusement. Sarah smiled. "Exactly. Now, let's figure out how to build some cosmic levees." As she began sketching out her ideas, Sarah reflected on how far they'd come. 3 weeks ago, she had been preparing to leave space behind. Now she was helping design gravitational engineering projects to save the galaxy. Sometimes, she thought, the universe had a strange way of putting people exactly where they needed to be. The Vega system wasn't much to look at. 3 gas giants orbiting a dying star, but it would serve as the perfect testing ground for their theory. The void cascade was projected to reach it within days, and no sentient species called it home. If they were going to attempt to redirect space-time itself, this was the place to try. Gravitational array deployment at 80%, Marcus reported from his station aboard the Starweaver. The human had adapted remarkably well to alien technology, though Sarah noticed he still muttered Earth measurements under his breath while working. Around them, the combined scientific team monitored the deployment of their experimental system. Dozens of gravity generators, each one powerful enough to affect stellar orbits, were being positioned in a precise pattern around the system. The theory was simple: create an artificial gravitational landscape that would guide the cascade away from inhabited space. The execution, however, was proving far more complex. Commander Chen, Stone Cipher's crystalline voice resonated through the command center. We're detecting fluctuations in the quantum substrate. The generators are having an unexpected effect on local spacetime. Sarah studied the readings, remembering their endless simulations. That's actually normal for this stage. Remember, we're essentially creating artificial topography in space. There's bound to be some turbulence as reality adjusts. Speaking of turbulence, Zephyr's gaseous form swirled anxiously. The flow patterns are showing increasing instability. Are you certain these structures will hold? No, Sarah admitted frankly. We're literally attempting something that's never been done before, but our models show it should work. And right now, that's the best we've got. Corral, who had insisted on being present for the test despite the danger, displayed patterns of both concern and admiration. Your species' comfort with uncertainty continues to astound us. Final generator coming online now, Marcus announced. Gravitational array is complete, ready to activate on your command. Sarah took a deep breath. Months of theoretical work, countless hours of debate and refinement, all coming down to this moment. If they failed, they'd lose more than just an uninhabited star system. They'd lose precious time that the galaxy's civilizations couldn't afford. Begin activation sequence, she ordered. Standard increment protocol. The generators powered up one by one, each adding its influence to the growing gravitational web they were weaving through space. On the main display, a false color representation showed the artificial topography they were creating. Valleys and ridges in the fabric of space-time itself. 30% power, Marcus called out. Structure is stable. 50%. Minor fluctuations within expected parameters. 70%. Quantum substrate showing increased activity. 85%. Commander, we're seeing some unusual readings. Before Marcus could elaborate, alarms erupted across every monitoring station. The carefully constructed gravitational landscape began to twist in ways their simulations had never predicted. The generators are resonating with each other. First Light's crystalline form flickered in distress. They're amplifying one another's effects exponentially. Shut them down, Sarah ordered, but it was too late. The gravitational forces they had unleashed were self-sustaining now, creating a cascade effect of their own. Generator 7 is critical, Marcus reported tensely. If it goes, the feedback loop will destroy the entire array, and possibly this ship with it. Sarah's mind raced. Their carefully planned experiment was unraveling, threatening to become just as dangerous as the phenomenon they were trying to stop. But something about the pattern of the failure nagged at her. The resonance, she muttered, then louder, it's not random. Marcus, show me the power flow patterns between the generators. The display shifted, revealing complex energy interactions between the devices. To most observers, it would have looked like chaos, but Sarah saw something familiar. It's like harmonic oscillation, she said quickly, like waves amplifying each other. We don't need to shut it down. We need to change the rhythm. She turned to First Light. Can you adjust the phase timing of the generators individually? The Araxian mathematician's patterns shifted rapidly as they calculated. Yes, but the time window for adjustment is mere seconds. Do it. Match my pattern. Sarah began humming a simple tune, an old sea shanty she learned during her Navy days. As she hummed, she marked out a rhythm with her hands, showing which generators should fire when. First Light's crystalline surfaces sparkled as they translated Sarah's simple rhythm into precise mathematical instructions. One by one, the generators' pulses shifted, their gravitational outputs falling into a new pattern. The alarms began to quiet. The violent resonance between generators dampened, replaced by a stable, almost musical pattern of gravitational waves. It's working, Marcus breathed. The array is stabilizing. But Commander, how did you know? Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Every sailor learns about harmonics. Get them wrong, and waves can tear a ship apart. Get them right, and you can ride them forever. She turned to Corel. We'll need to redesign the entire deployment sequence, but now we know it's possible. The ambassador's patterns showed clear awe. You turned a catastrophic failure into a breakthrough by humming a song. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best ones, Sarah replied. And sometimes you have to improvise when your first plan falls apart. A new alert caught their attention. Long-range sensors had detected the leading edge of the void cascade, approaching right on schedule. Well, Sarah said, straightening her uniform, let's see if our cosmic dance floor can redirect this thing. All stations, prepare for contact. And Marcus, yes, Commander. Start recording everything. Whether this works or not, we're about to learn something interesting. As the cascade approached their gravitational web, Sarah felt an odd sense of calm. They had faced near disaster and adapted. They had taken a failure and turned it into an opportunity. And most importantly, they had proved that their wild theory could work in practice, even if not quite in the way they had originally planned. Contact in 5 minutes, Marcus announced. Commander, whatever happens next, I just want to say it's been an honor. Sarah nodded, her eyes fixed on the approaching phenomenon that had terrorized the galaxy. The honor's been mine. Now let's show the universe what happens when you combine human ingenuity with alien technology. The entire command center fell silent as they waited to see if their improvised solution would save or doom them all. The void cascade hit their gravitational array like a cosmic tide meeting a carefully engineered breakwater. For a moment that felt like eternity, everyone in the Starweaver's command center held their breath, watching as space-time itself wrestled with their artificial construct. Primary gravitational channels holding, Marcus reported, his voice tense. The cascade it's following the pattern. On the main display, they could see the phenomenon beginning to curve away from its original trajectory, following the path they had created through space. The gravitational web pulsed with the rhythm Sarah had improvised, each generator adding its voice to the cosmic symphony they had created. Remarkable. Stone Cipher's crystalline form sparkled with excitement. The space-time flow is actually stabilizing as it moves through our network. We're not just redirecting it, we're taming it. Sarah studied the readings carefully. The cipher was right. The cascade wasn't just changing direction, it was becoming more predictable, more controlled. It's like a river finding its banks, she mused. Once you give it a proper channel, it stops trying to forge new paths. Commander, First Light called out, their mathematical patterns shifting rapidly. I'm detecting something unprecedented in the quantum substrate. The cascade's interaction with our gravitational rhythm is creating new patterns in the underlying structure of space. Krell moved closer to the display, their colors shifting through shades Sarah had never seen before. Are you saying that the cascade is rebuilding the space-time it passes through? Not rebuilding, Sarah said slowly, watching the data stream in. Rewriting. Like a river deposits sediment as it flows, the cascade is leaving behind a changed but stable space-time structure. She turned to Marcus. What are the readings from the system's edge? All normal. Better than normal, actually. Local space-time coherence is 20% higher than baseline. Marcus looked up from his station, eyes wide. Commander, I think we just accidentally invented a way to strengthen the fabric of reality. A burst of excited conversation filled the command center as the implications sank in. The void cascade, which had threatened to unmake the galaxy, could potentially be used to reinforce it instead. They just had to show it where to go. We'll need to create a network, Sarah said, already thinking ahead. Multiple arrays, working together to channel the cascade through uninhabited sectors. We can use it to strengthen the boundaries between populated systems, create safe zones. And in doing so, Krell added, their patterns showing clear joy, turn a destroyer of worlds into a builder of them. Commander Chen, your species has exceeded our highest hopes. Sarah smiled, but her mind was already on the next challenge. We'll need to work fast. Map out safe corridors, build more arrays, and we'll need more humans involved. People who understand fluid dynamics, civil engineering, music theory. About that, Carell's patterns shifted to something more formal. The Orcsian Collective would like to propose a permanent position for you, Commander, as head of what we're tentatively calling the Spatial Engineering Division. Sarah blinked in surprise. Me? But I'm just a space station commander. Surely there are more qualified, more technically qualified, perhaps, Carell interrupted gently. But you've proven something far more valuable. You understand how to bridge perspectives, how to see patterns others miss, how to turn crisis into opportunity. You think like a human while working with aliens. Exactly what we need. Besides, Marcus added with a grin, someone needs to teach the galaxy about sea shanties. Sarah laughed, then grew thoughtful. 6 months ago, she had been preparing to leave space behind, thinking her greatest adventures were over. Now she was being offered a chance not just to stay among the stars, but to help reshape the galaxy itself. She looked around the command center at the beings she had come to think of as colleagues and friends. The Orcsian mathematicians with their crystal-clear logic, the Ven with their fluid perspective on reality, the Meridians with their deep understanding of cosmic structure, and humans bringing their unique way of thinking to this grand collaboration. I'll need to consult with Earth's authorities, she said finally, and we'll want to establish proper protocols for human-alien cooperation going forward. Of course, Carell agreed. We anticipated this might take some time too. They stopped as Sarah held up a hand. But personally, she smiled. I accept. After all, someone needs to keep an eye on these gravitational arrays we're building. We wouldn't want them getting out of rhythm. The next few hours were a blur of activity as they refined their control over the cascade and began planning the larger network. Sarah sent a detailed report back to Earth, knowing it would cause quite a stir in diplomatic circles. But as she watched humans and aliens working together, combining their perspectives to solve problems that had once seemed insurmountable, she knew she had made the right choice. You know what this reminds me of? Marcus said as they took a brief break in the ship's recreation area. What's that? That old saying about music being the universal language. Turns out it might be more universal than we thought. He gestured toward where First Light was attempting to teach a Ven scientist about Earth harmonics. We're literally conducting space-time now. Sarah nodded, watching the stars through the recreation area's viewport. Somewhere out there, the Void Cascade was following the path they had created for it, transforming from a force of destruction into one of renewal. It was a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous things could become the most valuable, if you just found the right way to work with them. Commander, Carell approached, their patterns showing what Sarah had learned to recognize as excitement. The first reports are coming in from the systems near our test site. The strengthened space-time structure is holding. Several civilian research vessels are already requesting permission to study the effects. Well then, Sarah said, straightening up, we'd better get to work on those protocols. The galaxy isn't going to reshape itself. As she followed Carell back to the command center, Sarah felt a deep sense of rightness. She had found her true home, not in the familiar confines of a human space station, but out here among the stars, helping to write the next chapter in the story of both humanity and the galaxy itself. The adventure, it seemed, was just beginning.